In the heart of Abajuma village, where the air always smelled of wet earth and the trees rustled with ancient secrets, a stranger arrived. His name was Wekesa, and he came with tales of visions, spirits, and powers unseen. He claimed to be sent by the gods, a prophet who would guide the village through the storms of fate. The villagers, especially the women, were drawn to him like bees to a flower. His voice, deep and soothing, carried promises of blessings, wealth, and prosperity. But hidden beneath his charm was a different kind of hunger. Wekesa's real motives were not from the heavens, but from something far more earthly. The people of Abajuma, however, were none the wiser. The village of Abajuma was small but full of life. The people lived simple lives, working on their farms, tending to their animals, and gathering around the large baobab tree to share stories in the evenings. The arrival of Wekesa stirred things up. At first, it was his predictions that amazed them. He told the village chief, Mzi Obala, that there would be a great flood. And sure enough, the rains poured down in torrents a week later. People began to see him as a true messenger of the gods.
Wekesa, your words are true. The gods must speak through you. The rains came just as you said.
I am but a humble servant of the gods, chief. Their messages come to me in visions. I only share what they reveal.
May the gods bless you, Prophet Wekesa. Our village is fortunate to have you.
Wekesa had now earned the trust of the people, but his real focus was elsewhere. He noticed how the women of the village began to follow him, seeking his advice on everything from crops to relationships. He quickly realized that he had more power over them than he did the men, and so his real work began. One evening, Wekesa called for a special ceremony by the river. The villagers gathered, eager to hear what the prophet had to say. Dressed in his flowing white robes, Wekesa stood by the riverbank, his arms outstretched.
The gods have spoken to me. They have said that the women of this village are special. You are the key to the prosperity of Abajuma. You must come to me for blessings, for through you, the village will thrive.
Did you hear that? We are chosen. The gods have chosen us. Amma was not the only one. Women like Nyambura, Sela, and even old Mama Nali began visiting Wekesa in secret. They believed that through his touch, they would receive the God's blessings and their lives would change. But Wekesa's blessings were anything but holy. He used his power to seduce and manipulate, taking what he wanted from them in the dark of night. The strange thing was, after their visits to Wekesa, the women were happy, happier than the men had ever seen them. The wives didn't nag anymore. They didn't argue about household chores. Life was suddenly peaceful for the men, and they weren't quite sure why.
You know, my wife has been acting strange. Ever since she started going to the prophet, she doesn't even nag me about helping with the cows anymore.
Maybe the gods told her to let you be lazy. Ha ha ha.
You know, if this is what blessings look like, I might just go to Wekesa myself.
As funny as the men's ignorance was, things took a darker turn when Nalia, the sharp-eyed widow, began noticing something was off. Unlike the other women, Nalia wasn't taken by Wekesa's charm. She had seen tricksters like him before, men who preyed on people's beliefs. She began watching him closely, waiting for him to slip up. One evening, she overheard Wekesa talking to Namono, the chief's young daughter. He promised her a special ceremony that would make her the most powerful woman in the village. Nalia's heart raced. She knew this ceremony was nothing more than another of Wekesa's tricks, but how could she prove it? That night, Nalia sat under the old baobab tree, deep in thought. She knew she needed help, but who would believe her? Then she remembered Kato, a former friend of Wekesa, Kato had once traveled with Wekesa back when he was just a wandering herbalist, not a prophet. He had left Wekesa's side after witnessing his deceitful ways, but had never spoken of it, fearing he would not be believed. Nalia sought out Kato, who had been living quietly on the edge of the village, avoiding attention. She found him tending to his small garden, the smell of fresh herbs filling the air. Kato, I need your help. Wekesa is deceiving the people, especially the women. You knew him before. You know his true nature.
I always knew he'd take things too far, but the villagers are too enchanted by him. They won't listen to me.
Then we'll show them proof they can't ignore. We have to act before he ruins more lives. Kato reluctantly agreed. He and Nalia devised a plan to expose Wekesa at his next grand ceremony, which he had announced would take place by the river. The whole village gathered that evening, eager to witness what Wekesa promised would be his greatest miracle yet. The drums beat a steady rhythm as the villagers circled around the prophet. Wekesa stood at the riverbank, his arms raised toward the sky, chanting in a strange language. The firelight flickered across his face, making him seem larger than life. The women especially looked on in awe. Just as Wekesa began to invoke the gods, Kato and Nalia stepped forward, their faces set with determination.
Wekesa, your time of deceit is over. The people of Abajuma deserve the truth.
How dare you interrupt this sacred ceremony? The gods will punish you for your insolence.
The only punishment here will be for you, Wekesa. This chest contains the truth about who you really are, a fraud. Nalia opened the chest, revealing a collection of trinkets, letters, and tokens from his past, evidence of his false prophecies, broken promises, and his real name, Mambo, a con man who had swindled his way through several villages. The women, especially, were devastated. They had trusted Wekesa, believed in his powers, and offered him their most vulnerable selves. Now they realized they had been fooled. The men, too, began to piece together what had really been happening during those blessing sessions.
So, that's what all those blessings were about. Ha 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 ha. I knew it was too good to be true.
No wonder my wife was so happy. Ha ha ha. We were being blessed with a whole lot of nothing.
The laughter among the men soon gave way to anger as the villagers dragged Wekesa from the river, his once grand robes soaked and his air of superiority gone. The prophet was no more. Wekesa, now exposed for the fraud he was banished from the village, never to return. But while Wekesa disappeared, the village was left to reckon with what had happened. The women, especially, felt betrayed by the man they had trusted with their deepest fears and hopes. Yet they were strong, and they vowed never to be deceived again. Amma, who had once sought Wekesa's help to save her marriage, took charge. She gathered the women together and they created a network of support, sharing their stories and vowing to stand together. Never again would they let a man claiming divine power manipulate them. Life in Abajuma slowly returned to normal, though the village was forever changed by Wekesa's deception. The men, once oblivious, now knew better than to let their wives' sudden happiness go unquestioned. Whenever a new traveler entered the village, claiming to have special powers, they were met with skeptical glances and knowing smiles. Years passed, and Wekesa became nothing more than a distant memory, a story told around the fire to warn future generations of false prophets. Yet some said that Namono, the chief's daughter, had gained powers of her own from her time with Wekesa. She had disappeared shortly after the ceremony, leaving behind an air of mystery. Some whispered that she now lived deep in the forest, quietly honing powers far greater than Wekesa's ever were. One day, a young man arrived in Abajuma, claiming to have visions of the future and a direct connection to the gods. He gathered the villagers, eager to show them his powers. But as he began to speak, the men simply leaned against the village tree, exchanging glances.
Another prophet, eh? Ha ha ha. I bet he's here to bless our wives again. Maybe this time we'll get some blessings too. Ha ha ha.
Let him speak. Who knows, maybe the river still has room for another prophet.
The traveler, seeing the skepticism in their faces, quickly gathered his belongings and left the village. Abajuma had learned its lesson well. The villagers no longer needed anyone to guide them. They were now their own prophets, trusting in each other rather than in the empty promises of strangers. And far from the village, deep in the heart of the forest, Namono lived in peace, her powers quiet but ever present. She smiled softly whenever she thought of Abajuma, knowing that the village had grown stronger from the trials it had faced. If you enjoyed this tale and want to hear more intriguing stories from African villages, be sure to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget to check out our other video, The Witch's Curse, a thrilling story of love, jealousy, and redemption that will keep you at the edge of your seat. Trust me, you won't want to miss it. Until next time, keep your eyes open and your heart guarded. See you in the next story.